Hey guys, this is Cambridge IGCSE Physics May June 2020, paper 23. Question 1. Diagram 1 shows a solid rectangular sided block. Diagram 2 shows the same block from the front and from the side. Meter rules have been shown close to the edges of the block. What is the volume of the block? This front over here is basically this. While the ruler says that it's from 1 centimeter to 5 centimeters, so this is 4 centimeters. Then for this, it's from 4 centimeters to 11 centimeters. So this is 7 centimeters. Then for this side, it's basically this. And it shows that it's from 15 to 21, making it 6 centimeters. And since we need to find the volume, all you have to do is just multiply all three of them together. 4 times 7 times 6 equals 268 centimeter cube. Question 2. A student investigates the motion of a ball rolling down a slope. The diagram shows the speed v of the ball at different times t. Which statement describes the motion of the ball? Now the options are about acceleration, speed, velocity, so let's first find out the acceleration. This is all 0, so there's nothing. Then over here, acceleration will be 2.8 divided by 0.2, which is 14. Then here, acceleration will be 5.1 minus 2.8 divided by 0.4 minus 0.2, 11.5. Then this will be 7.0 minus 5.1 divided by 0.6 minus 0.4. You can notice that I'm doing change in velocity divided by change in time. And it's 9.5, so the acceleration overall just decreased. And option A says that acceleration is not constant. Well, that's correct. They're all different. The acceleration is negative. No, they're all positive numbers, so this is wrong. The speed is decreasing. Well, even though the acceleration is decreasing, the speed is actually increasing. So nope. The velocity is constant. Of course, no, there is acceleration. So the answer is A. Question 3. Which statement about acceleration is correct? It is related to the changing speed of an object. Well, yeah, this can be correct. It's the rate of change of velocity, so it's kind of related, but let's look at the other options. It is the distance an object travels in 1 second. Nope, this is more of speed. It is the force acting on an object divided by the distance it travels in 1 second. Well, no, it definitely doesn't have to do with force and distance together, unless you're talking about force equals to mass times acceleration, but that's not the case here. It is the force acting on an object when it is near to the Earth. No, it's not a force, first of all, so our answer is A. Question 4. Which statement correctly describes the effects of placing a heavy load in a car? It is easier to accelerate the car and easier to bring the car to rest. Well, actually, it's the exact opposite of this. Just imagine having more stuff in your school bags. That's gonna make you walk slower and it's gonna require more energy for you to start moving and stop moving, probably. So it is actually more difficult to accelerate and more difficult to bring the car to rest. Well, to talk about this in physics terms, force equals to mass times the acceleration, and if the mass increases, then the force will have to be increased again, meaning that you require more force to accelerate or come to rest. Therefore, the answer is C. Question 5. Which row gives the correct weight for the mass shown? The value of G is 10 newtons per kilogram, while weight equals to mass times G. So if the mass is 2, the weight is 2 times 10 equals to 20. Oh, this is correct. If you look at the other options, they're all wrong. If the mass is 10, the weight should be 100. Then if the mass is 20, the weight should be 200. Be careful not to get confused and always memorize all your formulas. Question 6. A rectangular gymnasium is 50 meters long, 25 meters wide, and 8 meters high. The density of air is 1.2 kilograms per meter cube. What is the best estimate of the mass of air in the gymnasium? If you see this density and mass, there should be one formula that you immediately think of, which is density equals to mass divided by volume. We can find the volume with these three numbers given. Well, we need to find the mass. So mass equals to density times the volume. Density is 1.2 given here. And volume, you just have to multiply all three of them together. So 50 times 25 times 8. And that gives 12,000 kilograms. And the answer is D. Question 7. Which moving object has a resultant force acting on it? A diver rising vertically through water at constant speed. Nope, it's a constant speed, just rising vertically. So there is no force, and we can know this because force equals to mass times the acceleration, and there should be some kind of acceleration present. Aircraft circling an airport at constant speed. Okay, even though this time it's also a constant speed, it's circling. And this is a centripetal force. And in order for the aircraft to go around the circle, it needs a force to make it go around the circle instead of going straight. So there's actually a force that is making it to go around, and we say that there is a resultant force in it. Well, if you look at the other options, the others are just terminal velocity, same thing as constant speed, and also constant speed, all going in straight lines. So there's definitely no force here, and that makes our answer as B. Question 8. Which quantity is not a vector? Vectors is something that has a direction in it. Correct. Temperature, of course, no. Don't get confused by the thermometer liquid going up and down. That's not the kind of direction that they're talking about. Velocity, yes, and weight, yes. Question 9. A ball falls vertically to the floor and rebounds vertically upwards. Just before it hits the floor, its speed is 4 meters per second. As it rebounds, its speed is 3 meters per second. The mass of the ball is 0.50 kilograms. Okay, I shouldn't be circling the numbers. I should actually highlight the type of values that are given: speed, initial speed, final speed, and the mass. What is the change in momentum of the ball? Momentum equals to mv minus mu, or you can also think of it as mass times change in velocity. Well, we have everything. The first thing is the initial velocity, next final velocity and mass here. But a very important factor here is that when it hits the floor at 4 meters per second, it's gonna go in this direction. And then when it rebounds, it's gonna go back up in an opposite direction. So actually, since we're using values of velocity for momentum instead of just speed, the value of final velocity is not 3 meters per second. Instead, it will be negative 3 meters per second, since the direction of movement is opposite to the initial movement, which stays the same as 4 meters per second. Therefore, when we calculate this, it should be 0.50 times negative 3 minus 4, which is negative 7, and it will be negative 3.5 kilogram meter per second. But they don't have it in negative values. It's a matter of downwards and upwards. Well, remember that we put downwards as positive in the beginning and negative for going upwards, and ours is negative, so it's basically just going upwards like this. So the answer is D, 3.5 kilogram meter per second upwards. So always be careful of the direction when you're calculating the momentum, and try to fix the first movement as the positive value, in this case going downwards, and if you get negative as a result, that should be opposite of the initial direction that you have chosen. Question 10. A mass bounces up and down on a steel spring. The diagram shows the mass and the spring at different points during the motion. Highest, mass moving down. Lowest, mass moving up. At which point does the mass have the least gravitational potential energy, and at which point is the most elastic energy stored in the spring? Okay, first you need to take note that they're both energy, and the point where you have the least gravitational potential energy is actually the point where you'll have the highest or the most elastic energy. That is because the total energy always stays the same. So you cannot have a point where you both have high gravitational potential energy and high elastic energy, and also because gravitational potential energy pulls you down and the elastic energy pulls you up. These are exact opposites of each other, so they need to be balanced. If one thing is low, the other thing should be high. Okay, so first let's look at where you will have the least amount of gravitational potential energy. Since GPE equals to mgh, the height really matters, and if you want to have least amount, the height should be at its minimum point, which is this one, the third one at lowest point. So it should be lowest point, either C or D, but as I've just said, the point where you have the least gravitational potential energy is the point where you have the most elastic energy. So for our second column, the answer will also be at lowest point. And our answer is D. Question 11. The velocity v of an object increases as it falls towards the ground. Which quantity is directly proportional to v squared? Since it's falling down, it's moving, and when it's moving, there is kinetic energy. And anyway, if you see this v squared, you should really immediately think of Ke equals to half mv squared, because this is the only formula with v squared. So the one that is directly proportional to v squared is the one on the other side of the equation, which is the kinetic energy of the object, C. Question 12. The diagram shows a solid block resting on a bench. The dimensions of the block are shown. On which labeled surface should the block rest to produce the smallest pressure on the bench? Pressure equals to force divided by area, and since force is going to stay constant, you want to have the smallest pressure, then you need to have the largest area possible. And you can do some simple math calculations, or you can just already guess it. Well, obviously not Q, this looks very small. It's either P or R. Well, P is 80 times 40, so 3,200. And R is 20 times 80, which is 1,600. So our answer is PA, where there is the largest surface area. Question 13. A pipe full of water connects a water supply on a hill to a tap lower down the hill. The length of the pipe is 500 meters. The height of the supply above the tap is 100 meters. The density of the water is 1,000 kilograms per meter cubed. The effective atmospheric pressure is negligible. What is the water pressure at the tap? We have a separate formula for pressure of liquid, which is density times G times height. Density is here, G is just 10, H, height is here. So we just multiply all of them together. 1,000 times 10 times 100 equals to 1 million Pascal. Answer is C. And yes, they've given you this, the length of the pipe, just to confuse you. Question 14. When a molecule rebounds from a wall, a force is exerted on the wall. What causes this force? Let's say there's a wall here, the molecule goes here. When it hits it, it rebounds back. Well, you can see that the direction of speed is changed, which means velocity has changed. And when the velocity changes, we say that momentum has changed, since change of momentum equals to mass times change of velocity. Therefore, this force is caused by change of momentum. It's definitely not the kinetic energy gained or lost by the molecule. You don't gain or lose energy by getting hit on the wall. And it's not about the change of speed of the molecule. It's about the velocity and momentum. Question 15. The relationship between pressure P and volume V of a gas is given as PV equals to constant. Yes, we know this. Under which conditions for the mass of a gas and for its temperature does the equation hold? Yeah, we have two conditions for this equation. they're all related to mass and temperature. Well, it's easy to remember. Both of them need to be constant. It's D, and that's it. Question 16. The diagram shows a liquid in glass thermometer. Which row gives the correct labels for the thermometer? X. Is it water or alcohol? Obviously not water, it's alcohol, or mercury maybe. And then Y. Is it narrow tube of uniform diameter, or this an immersed in substance to be measured? It's the narrow tube of uniform diameter because the ion that is immersed in the substance is here, X. So the answer is B. Question 17. The diagram shows 4 blocks of steel. The blocks are all drawn to the same scale. The same quantity of thermal energy is given to each block. Which block shows the greatest rise in temperature? In order to show the greatest rise in temperature with the same amount of thermal energy, you need to have the smallest volume so that there will be basically less particles to heat up. And you just choose the one that looks the smallest. It's A. Question 18. Why are metals better conductors of thermal energy than non-metals? Metals, they contain free electrons. Yeah, this is correct. These free electrons can move around, share their heat, and allow heat to be transferred. Their molecules are further apart. Not really. This is more of a solid, liquid, gas matter, not about the metals and non-metals. Their molecules vibrate at a higher frequency. Nope, nothing to do with metals and non-metals. They have smoother surfaces. Nope. Question 19. The diagram shows a vacuum flask used to keep a liquid warm. Which method of heat loss are reduced by the vacuum between the silvered walls? The vacuum is precisely this. Okay, not so precise, but anyway. So this vacuum prevents heat loss, and it does that by preventing conduction. So you know the liquid particles are all just touching the walls, and they can transfer their heat energy to the silver walls that's being touched, but with the vacuum it prevents it, so conduction is prevented. Then for convection, it prevents any cold air or air with lower temperature entering and allowing the whole liquid to be cooled down by other convection currents. So this also makes sense. But for radiation, this radiation is prevented by the outer cover and probably the airtight lid as well. It's not the job of vacuum to do that. For vacuum walls, always remember that it's only related to conduction and convection. So our answer is B. Question 20. An earthquake monitoring station records the arrival of 16 complete waves of an earthquake wave in 20 seconds. The speed of the earthquake wave is 6 kilometers per second. What is the wavelength of the earthquake wave? We have speed, wavelength, the time given for 16 waves. Then we use this formula, velocity equals to frequency times the wavelength. And since we need to find the wavelength equals to velocity divided by frequency. Velocity is given here, but for frequency, we need to calculate that. Frequency equals to 1 divided by the period, which is the time taken for one complete wave. But we only have the time for 16 complete waves, so for one complete wave, there will be 20 divided by 16. 1.25, and frequency will be 1 over 1.25, which is 0.8. Now we have all the values, but be careful. Our answers are all in meters, but the speed is given in kilometers. So we have to change that. Just multiply by 1,000. So this will be 6,000 meters per second. And finally, we can substitute our values. Wavelength equals to 6,000 divided by 0.8, which is 7,500. And that is over here, option D. I'll do the rest 20 questions in my next video, so stay tuned. I hope this video helped you guys. Subscribe to get ready for your IGCSE exams. Stay safe and God bless you guys. Bye!